The next things I want to talk about is the eunks or ionks and agoge. Ionks is like a name for a bird. I've thought about it quite a bit, not come to any great conclusions about it. I'd need a classicist to tell me more about this specific type of bird. And then the eonks is an agoge spell. An agoge spell is a spell that leads, that brings the victim to the operator. We'll see this similarly in Sanskrit, where we see this word akarshana. Akarshana is a ritual that draws someone forward to you, whether it be an enemy so you can kill them, or a woman so you can sleep with her, or whatever. It draws and bewitches. We'll get into that when we do Indic stuff. So eonks is a type of spell that uses persuasive analogies of frantic, maddening desires and emotions. The result is an agoge spell, a spell that leads, that pulls the victim toward the operator. Now, this book has a glossary. I pulled this definition from page 176. Use the glossary. There's a lot of Greek. You're not going to be able to remember all the Greek terms. Pharaoni is pretty good about translating most things, but sometimes you'll want to look stuff up in the glossary. So eonks is a salacious bird. So the eonks is the spell itself, a lascivious, chirpy, weird, flighty, sexy bird. So a salacious bird and a type of agoge spell that involves a sympathetic or persuasive ritual in which this bird, this very flighty bird, is tied to a wheel. Also, generally, an eonks can be called an erotic spell. Use the glossary for these Greek words. Okay, so Pharaoni describes the ritual on page 58. A man binds a small lascivious bird on a wheel. Okay, so remember, the bird symbolizes lasciviousness. You might as well call it a horny bird. He got a small horny bird and he puts it on a wheel. Now, a wheel is a common implement for torture in the Greek world. So you'd take a big wheel, you'd tie somebody to it, leave them there, beat them, whatever, for torture. So we do have a notion of suffering on the wheel. A man binds a small horny bird on a wheel, and then he tortures it with whips and fire in hope that he can force his female victim from her family by transferring to her body, by means of persuasive analogy, the bird's natural lubricity and madness, lubricity also horny, as well as the additional pain and burning brought by torture. So there's two steps here. One, the qualities of the kinky bird go on to the victim, but also the torture of the kinky bird, those actions ought and be an analog to the experiences that the victim has of spinning, erotic, crazy desire. So it's a two-step process there. So it generates insanity and furious passions, like the bird, the horny, crazy bird. It transfers the abuse that is visited upon the bird onto the victim. But a third thing I want to note is it was common to sacrifice animals at the time, either to celebrate or to honor vows, or used in medicine or in magic. So if you're cringing at the harming of animals, remember it was not a cringy thing for these folk. You can feel cringy. That's okay. I feel upset when he talks about the sacrifice of the puppy. That bothers me. But the reality of it is, this is not our culture. So our judgments that animal sacrifice is wrong, that's to be bracketed and to be understood as kind of, to just say, our shit. That's our shit. Okay. So here's another one. This is just so great. Apples and stone fruits. So there's a manipulation of brides and brides-to-be by making them catch an apple or a stone fruit. Also a what do we call it? Also a thing called a melon. And then there's also what do you call it? Stone fruits, so like a peach or apples or pomegranates. Okay, so what happens is we have all these artistic depictions of these fruits being given between people who are courting or whatnot. And traditionally, classicists have thought these are love offerings. These are charms and tokens of affection. But this is actually a magic ritual. The stone fruits, or the apple, all having seeds, pomegranate has a ton of seeds, are seeded to show fecundity, fertility. All right, so these are rituals. Now, if you throw the enchanted apple to the woman and she catches it, she can either eat it or she can hold it close to her. Both will be effective in causing her to become erotically inclined toward the one who threw the apple. At one point, I have walked into class when teaching this section and thrown apples to students, and then I felt weird. And that was more fun to watch them throw apples at one another and us all have a big old laugh about the whole thing. So some of the sources actually suggest there's some consent here. Now, in the Eros, these erotic and agoge rituals with the yonks, there's no consent here. The woman is not consenting to be afflicted. But here there's a sense that she might just not catch it, or she might choose not to use it, or it's an elaborate social custom that kind of signals to the world that something's going on. Some sources note this consent and note that a lot of this fruit throwing is very public, so it's witnessed by other people. So a woman might feign her displeasure just in general, out of that being the custom. Once again, agoge spells and Eros inflicting spells and drawing towards spells, they have no element of consent. There is a folk tradition of eating aphrodisiac fruits, usually apples and quinces and whatnot. So of eating aphrodisiac fruits in an arranged marriage. In a marriage rites, sometimes a fruit is given to the bride. And Farone suggests that in an arranged marriage, the wife would eat this fruit that was thought to instill sexual desire to sort of build the connection with the husband and to kind of work out symbolically the fact that they're initiating a sexual relationship. There was also a fear around Greece that prostitutes would give someone enchanted fruit and then their clients would be destroyed by erotic love for the prostitute. We'll get into these social issues with sex workers in a little bit. What about fruits with seeds like pomegranates? You remember the story of Persephone? So Persephone is a goddess, well, the daughter of a main goddess, and she goes to Hades. And she's hanging out in Hades, in the underworld, with the Lord Hades. And she lives there for, I think it's 5 months. And while she's there, she eats 5 pomegranate seeds. So when she gets out, Hades says, all right, you can go back to your mama. However, for 5 months out of every year, you are going, in fact, to be in the underworld. Now, you'd think winter, right? But it's Mediterranean. It's the Mediterranean world. So the growing season is over the winter, and the summertime is actually the time when it gets just dry and desiccated and hot and burnt out. So imagine that Persephone has left, if you ever lived in Southern California, this is what it looks like. During the brown months, that's when Persephone is gone. And then when she comes back, she paints the flowers and they have spring and whatnot. There you go. Okay, so